整整几十年，他把中华人民主义还让这片土地变得满目疮痍。全世界投毒制造各种生化武器，我去，他答应了人类命运共同体。山寨爆料，写手再有新天道，振兴我中华同胞，兴起了灭共浪潮。壮志冲云霄，看那国旗飘飘，别鸟铁岭河上，神州阳光普照。江山笑，血雨遥。谁负谁生出一份笑，风萧萧，人笑险如潮，海不开天风潮。3年多的爆料，就是这压死颗东方实锤，每天都有一点也不嫌多。以美灭共，以共灭共，还得靠我们战友们行动。天佑我中华儿女，共建联邦新中国。黑夜显曙光，照亮东方的眼，戳破宏伟的火焰，我们为了安世国业，越过了死亡幽谷，踏上了灭共之路。总有太多雄剑，我们出往世上虚度。听风笑，收归正道。相聚在今朝，我听报 The voice of the world, sitting behind the people's side. We are running out of time. Take down, action. Take down the system. Take down, action. Take down the system. La 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 la. 整整几十年，他把中华人民主义还让这片土地变得满目疮痍。全世界投毒制造各种生化武器，我去，他答应了人类命运共同体。山寨爆料，携手占有新天道，振兴我中华同胞，兴起了灭共浪潮。壮志冲云霄，看那国旗飘飘，烈鸟铁岭河上，神州阳光普照。江山笑，血雨遥，谁负谁生出一份笑。风萧萧，人笑险如潮。盘古开天风潮，3年多的爆料，就是这雅斯克重磅实锤，每天都有一点也不嫌多。以美灭共，以共灭共，还得靠我们战友们行动。天佑我中华儿女，共建联邦新中国。黑夜见曙光，照亮中华的眼。我们宏伟的火焰，我准备了3世多年，越过了死亡幽谷，踏上了灭共之路。总有太多兄弟，我们中华之声虚度。
Good evening, brothers and sisters from the Whistleblowers Movement. Welcome to the program of Real People and Real Story. This is our very first version of English program in this show. Tonight, I will be your host, Isla, and together with me, Prince will be the co-host. We're honored to have David as our guest. So Prince, why don't you say hello to our audience first?
Hello everyone, my name is Prince. I was on the last episode of Real People, Real Story, and I'm honored to be the host this time to introduce our great friend to you, David. David, will you introduce yourself to our audience?
I sure will. First of all, I want to thank you both for having me on the show. I'm very honored that I am on the very first English episode of, what's the name of it again?
Real People, Real Stories.
There we go. Real People's Real Stories. Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sorry I didn't know the name. But anyway, I am very honored to be here and especially honored to have these two fine American citizens right beside me, Prince and Isla. You probably have seen me on The Fringe. I'm the host. Isla's usually co-host. Prince is one of our regular guests. He's been really busy lately, so we haven't had him on the show. But it's definitely an honor to be on this show. Thank you very much.
Of course. So David, I'll have my very first questions for you. How do you know about Whistleblowers Movement? What kind of events or like accidents bring you the attention to this organization, to the group of our brothers and sisters?
Well, that certainly is a great question. So the way it started for me with the Whistleblower Movement is as everybody probably knows by this point, my wife is Chinese, Judy, and she's a active member of the Whistleblower Movement. I remember one day I came home from work and she had on, I think it was 2 or 3 cell phones, an iPad, a computer, even our TV, which has Wi-Fi. She had this guy on talking about this whistleblower movement, and his name was Miles Guo. And I said, what are you watching? She started telling me about him and getting all excited, and you got to listen. And I was like, and everything I think back then in 2017 when it started, I think was in Chinese. Right. They might have had G translators, but again, I was doing other things in my own life, and I wasn't really getting fully involved in it. It was kind of like, oh, well, that's cool, and she'd do her thing and I'd do mine, but she was always on it. And I'm like, what is her obsession with this? Why? And she would try to explain it to me. Her English is pretty good, but her Chinese is obviously a lot better. She was born and raised in China. But eventually I started listening when she started telling me what Miles was about and what he represented. Then she started telling me about this guy called Prince. And she said, you got to see this kid. He's amazing. He's only, I'm not going to say your age. I won't. But you can tell he's not very old. But anyway, we won't divulge any ages. You'll be able to figure mine out by the time this show's over, based on my history. But she started telling me about this handsome young man, Prince, who's really smart and knows all these things. And I said, all right, let me check it out. And she showed me some things with Prince. I'm like, where is he getting? How does he know all this? What is going? I started getting really intrigued by. I don't know if you knew this or not, but you're one of the main reasons I got into the whistleblower movement. Yeah, you are, and it's because obviously because of what Miles was saying, but to see someone this young, that influenced by something, and seeing how much passion he showed about that was something that I bought into. Obviously, Miles has a lot of passion too. But when you see the bookends of it, when you see an adult doing this, and you see someone this young doing it, you're like, okay, there's something going on here. I want to see what's happening. So I started watching a lot more with my wife. I started watching the translation to G translators, and eventually I joined, and I became part of the whistleblower movement. I was sold, not immediately though, I'll tell you, because I didn't know what was going on. I just thought it was some, you know how that goes when you first hear about something. You're not sure. She really is this guy like a cult leader or something? You know what I mean? And I think people may even regard him as that to this day. Obviously, the CCP doesn't like him, but if you find out who the man really is, which I did, it's an easy sell when you find out what Miles really is about and what he really represents. And then when I started getting involved in the whistleblower movement, I started watching a lot more. I watched Lou Duh. I found out that you could watch him G Translator. So when I watched Lou Duh G translators, when they were translating in English what he was saying, I was blown away. I was like, where's he getting this information from? Is this real? And then what's really strange, though, is when you start hearing what they're saying, but you're not hearing it in the media, in the mainstream media. You're like, all right, is this real or not? And then a couple weeks later, sometimes a month later, and as we talked about, that's right. You hear about it a year later sometimes, which is what happened yesterday. We talked about it. CNN all of a sudden discovered that there was a virus created in a lab in Wuhan, China. We were talking about that a year ago when Dr. Yan came over here. So, but anyway, going back to Lou Duh, when he started talking about things that nobody else knew about or were informed about, and then you'd hear about it later, I was like, this is really serious. Like, there's something going on here. So I got involved again because, and again, it's because of what Miles represented. It was to take down the CCP, and that's the origin. That's the bottom line. That's the foundation of everything the whistleblower movement and the new federal state of China represents. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to take down a communist regime. Nothing at all wrong with that. Right. And as a former soldier, United States Marine, I certainly bought into that even more easily. So what I did was the first thing I ever did for the whistleblower movement, it involved Prince. My wife told me, Prince wants to call you on a phone, and can we do a video of you during the election process, right? It was during the election. Right. And he wanted to see where we were and what we were doing. So I got on my phone, and Prince interviewed me. We talked for a little bit, and he started asking me questions, and I felt really comfortable because I watched him a lot up until that point. Speaks really good English. It was easy to answer. So when Prince started asking me questions, I started feeling like I was really part of it, you know? That's the exciting part. That's when it really happened. That's when everything clicked. And I never told you that either. When Prince interviewed me, that was the day that I knew that I wanted to do more. I wanted to speak my voice, because afterwards he was like, that was awesome, man. You were really, and I didn't realize what I was doing. I was just being honest. And the funny thing is, the irony of it all is, that's what this show is all about. I'm sorry, that's what show's all about. Right. All the shows are all about. Right. But that's what the foundation of this is. It's based on taking down the CCP, and it's us being truthful and being honest. Right. And that's what this show is about. I guess I'm going to have to be honest about my personal life here soon, but as I've seen before on this show. But Prince interviewing me was when it all clicked. And I was like, okay, I want to do more of this. I had a background in the entertainment industry a long time ago. I didn't dabble in it for years since then. So the next thing my wife says is they want you to come to D.C. And I was like, for what? They want you to interview people on the street. And during this big thing that they were having, it was in November. What was that date again, Prince?
November 14th.
November 14th. And it was the very first raising of the new federal state of China flag in Washington, D.C. at the monument. The most impressive thing, and there's a side story to that, the most impressive thing about that was Prince and Phil got that thing together in how many days was that?
4 days.
4 days. 4 days. Did you hear that?
Within a week.
And you should have seen, if you didn't see the event, you should have seen it. Prince and Phil put this thing together in 4 days. And it was an extravaganza. They put together something that no two people should have ever been able to put together in 4 days. They had a gigantic stage set up at the Sylvan Theater,
Right.
which is right across. There's a big patch of grass where the monument is, and then there's a theater right there. They set that up. I remember at the last minute, you were still trying to get a contract signed for that.
Well, we got the permit for the application.
Right.
The permit application approved for using the National Theater stage.
Right.
24 hours prior
Yeah.
to the event start date, and from the time we applied for the application to the time the permit was approved, it took less than 24 hours and marked a record in the history of the city of Washington,
Right,
D.C.
that's never happened before. That was
Very
amazing.
impressive.
That in itself, yeah, it was amazing. So I get there and I meet the prince for the first time. I think it was at dinner. We were talking. May was there. She was the co-host, and I found out. I think it was either that night or maybe the next morning. I'm not sure when. They said Prince is not going to be in the studio anymore. He's going to go out to where the theater is, and they
Right.
want you in the studio. I said, what? They want me in the studio? So I went from a guy in a car on a phone talking to Prince to a guy that was going to be in the studio, and it wasn't just any studio. It was the studio that they still use today, and Sean Spicer and companies in that, and I think even
For Newsmax TV.
Yeah, Newsmax broadcast from there. So we're in this big time studio, like national, and I was like, I wasn't scared, but I didn't know what to expect, and I just kind of, everyone's like, I guess I'll fast forward to when it was over. Everyone's like, you were so amazing. How did you? I said, I don't know. It was just easy for me. Because up until that point, I did all the studying. I looked into the whistleblowers movement, to New Federal State of China. I read books. I watched everything I could on GTV. And I was fully invested in the whistleblower movement at that point. So when I started talking about it, when I saw what was happening on the street, and I would be like, okay, we're going to the street now, this is happening, that's happening, it was just natural for me to do that. And that's the crazy thing about where I am today and getting interviewed by you guys, is that I have my own, well, it's not my show. That's one thing I want to say. I say that sometimes, and I always have to correct myself. The Fringe is not my show, it's our show.
Right.
I'm just a host and a co-host, that's all. We can talk about it later if you want, but the point is that I went from a guy on a phone within, I think it was even a week or two that happened, to being in the studio, and we had 5 million views that day for that show. And the director who directs all the programs that happen in the studio, directs these major broadcast news companies, came out with eyes as wide as saucers and says, I've never seen anything like this before. The number of people that watch this show, he was blown away. This is the director who directs anybody that comes through there. So he's like the all-time director of the studio. Was blown away by how powerful that was, and you did a great job, May and I. But really, it was about how many people really watch that, and that right there was the nail in. Well, I don't say nail in the coffin, but that was the second moment where I was like, "There's no turning back now." First I was like, okay, I know I want to do this. But after that, I was like, wow. I couldn't believe it. You hear about all these people on YouTube that struggle to get these views. And I just sit down in the studio and we have 5 million people watching this thing. So it not only showed that we had people watching, but it even goes deeper than that. It shows you how powerful this movement is, how powerful the whistleblower movement is, and how important the New Federal State of China is.
Right.
And then I saw Steve Bannon was involved, and all the other people that Giuliani. I mean, anybody who was anybody that was in some kind of contact with Miles Guo. The biggest one being Steve Bannon. They did their thing on the yacht. Little side note here: Steve Bannon was the first to read the Declaration of the New Federal State of China.
Yep.
I was the second one to read it live. We went to a march in New York.
Grand Amy
that's
Plaza.
correct.
Yes, when
I
Miles
witnessed
came
that.
out
Right.
on the balcony,
I witnessed
everybody
that.
was cheering. They asked me to read the first page in English, so I read the first page of it. I didn't have to read the whole thing. Know what it took. You saw when Steve Bannon read it on the boat. That took forever. It's really long. But they only asked me to read the first page. It was read in Chinese, and then I read it in English. It was such an honor. I got kind of choked up. You know how I am. I'm really emotional. Mm-hmm. But just having the opportunity to do the things that I've done with the whistleblower movement in New Federal State of China, you can't you can't think there's anything but God acting on my behalf and putting me in the situation where I'm in today. And that's the reason why I stuck with this. And as I did, we went to DC. We had we were going to have we were going to have the American version of this. Things didn't work out as planned. That happens. We know that. But as soon as I got home, they're like, hey, Phil called me and said, hey, we have a proposition for you. We want you we want you to host another show. You can name it whatever you want. We have 2 co-hosts we think would be great, Isla and Ada.
Right.
And it took me forever to get their names correct, and I still mess them up. But anyway, so we started The Fringe, and so we've come even further. It's like more steps and more steps. It's like climbing this ladder. But the thing is, the more I do it, the more I learn too. It's just an amazing experience altogether. To be again where I was and where I am today, I would have never thought in a million years that I would be the person I was just a few weeks after talking to Prince to where I was after that to where I am now. It feels like almost like a dream. Like it's just flat. Everything's happening so fast. There, 1 minute I'm out in the street protesting and we're getting hail poured on top of us, during the court when we had that happened. The hail came down and I got on the front lines and I felt what that was really like. That's another thing that's really cool is you kind of, to get out there, you guys both do it. You get out there and protest in the blistering hot sun and the cold snow and the freezing rain. You still do it because you love it, because at the core of it all, it means something to you. And if you keep doing it, people are going to start listening. And that's what we learned yesterday.
Right.
The more we did it, the more people started listening. It's sad that CNN took a year, and I just, it's one of the things that blows me away at this moment, because it's such a big moment in I think yesterday talking about this was such a big moment in our movement, to say what we've been saying for over a year now, and nobody believed us, to yesterday when CNN's acting like they're the ones that discovered it.
Yeah.
But
David,
we know all along. Yeah.
Adjust your mic so that they have your voice more clear.
Okay.
Yes,
Is that
put it
better?
Right here. Yes.
Is that better?
Yes.
So could they hear everything I just said, or do I have to do it all over again?
Yes, of course.
So I just want to switch gear a little bit
Sure.
here. We've talked about the movement. We've talked about how you begin to hear about the movement. And to be honest, I'm very honored to be able to, kind of have the voice out to the English audience, because that's one of the things why I decided to join the movement, was because first I see there's a lack of young people joining the movement, and I think it is very important. It is instrumental for the success of the movement to have young people join in, right? Because the young generation is the hope of every movement, of every political organization, of every company. You need young blood. And when I first stepped up, I went on War Room like in April, May of last year, when pretty much I don't see any other people my age that was speaking out against the Communist Party. So now we have Isla, obviously, we have Ada, we have Evelyn, we have Phil, we have all of these brilliant young people joining us, and I'm just extremely honored and thrilled to have you guys by my side and by Mouse's side, to be able to voice our advocacy against the CCP in English to a wider audience, international audience, because frankly it is very important that the Chinese people and the American people stand together. That way, because I'm wearing a new Federal State of China flag today, and you're wearing an American flag today, and both of these flags stand for freedom, faith, and and righteousness. To be frankly, and there's nothing, there's nothing standing between the Chinese people and the American people except the propaganda of the Chinese Communist Party.
Exactly.
So it is so important to have this platform and to have programs like the Fringe to consistently be able to tell people the truth. So just to switch gear a little bit, so David, you mentioned that you were a United States Marine, right? So and I learned a little bit that you were in our school before you joined the Marines. So that's quite a bit of a switch, right? So could you tell us a little bit, why did you decide to go to the art school, and how did you go from art school to being a United States Marine?
Good question.
Okay, so it all started when I was born, and no, I'm not gonna go back that far. I'm just kidding. So ever since I was a kid, I really enjoyed drawing and illustration and things like that. So my whole life growing up, I was always into drawing and painting, and I dabbled in art. I took all and it went to the point to where when I was in high school, they started this new program called Honors Art, and I actually my major in my senior year in high school was the history of art. So I learned a lot about art history, which I loved. I was like, this is really great, and I thought, well, maybe this will be what I do later. But all my friends were like, the guys that I hung out with, I played a lot of sports in high school, and everybody was athletes, and we're going to be soldiers. Everybody wanted to be Navy SEALs or Marines or Army or Navy, Coast Guard, whatever it was. But my smaller group of friends, we all talked about the Marines a lot. They weren't very happy when I went to art school, but it was what I had, it's what I wanted to do. So they kind of went off and, they started their Marine careers, and I went to art school for a semester. It was okay. I partied probably a little bit too much, but so I kind of wanted to get my life back on track, and I was like, I should probably go back and do what I originally wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So I joined the Marines. So I went from being, in an art school to the Marines, which is like, you can't get any, there's like the bookends of what a person wants to do with their life, then go to art school or be a United States Marine, which everybody knows. Their boot camp is probably the toughest of all of them. It's 12 weeks. It's the longest. It's even tougher right now. They have a thing called the Crucible, where you have to go through like a whole week, and like they don't sleep for a few days. And it wasn't that bad when I was in. But when I was in, it was still the Marines, you know what I mean? And the few, the proud. And it's something I wanted to accomplish because it was the hardest one to get through. And I was like, well, that's the one I want. I guess I've always been that way, because there was such a challenge there. I wanted to see if I could do it. I wanted to push myself to the limits, and that's exactly what they do when you're a Marine. It's so funny when you see me today, people would never realize, well, with my new haircut, they would probably think, oh yeah, he might have been a Marine, but the years went by, I let it grow out long, whatever, blew it up or whatever. But people sometimes, I tell them the Marine Corps story, like, you were a Marine, really? You like don't seem like one. And yeah, it was a very, very long time ago. So if you do your math, and this is kind of where I'll divulge my age to you, if you do the math, I was in 88 to 92. So most kids go in when they're 18 or 19, so you can figure it out. I'm not gonna tell you how old I am, but you can figure it out. Anyway, so when I was in the Marines, this is something else that my friends laughed at. Is when I went into Marines, I didn't actually. When I chose my MOS, which is your job that you want to do for the next 4 years, the first one I chose was to be an 03, which was an 0311, which is infantry, which is they give you the rifle, you go to a war, and you fight. I chose that, but then I kind of switched to admin, so I ended up being a pencil pusher, and I went to what they call it, and I went to admin school in California for 3 months, and I learned how to type. I did all that stuff, but you're still a Marine. I mean, you are always the rifle range, qualifying, making sure that your sharpshooting skills are there, and you're training all the time. Every day you're getting up, even in admin school, and when you go to your actual duty station, you wake up every day, you exercise, you work out. I mean, I was in the best shape of my life every day, and it was a wonderful experience. But I got out, and I was like not sure again where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do with my life. But it was a great experience in the Marine Corps, but I wasn't sure after that what I wanted to do. So I kind of floated around, and I dabbled in the entertainment industry. I wanted to be an actor because that's something else. As an artist when you're young, you also think about the other, entertainment-wise, artistically, what I was good at or what I did. I was always the kid in school that made people laugh and joked around. I'm very outgoing, so it was easy for me to get into the next phase of my life, which was an actor. So I bounced around to different restaurants working. So there's a joke to have, an inside joke with actors. When you move to New York, you support your acting habit with a waiting tables job, and that's what I did. So, but that's kind of fast forwarding a little bit. But to begin with, though, I was just kind of working at restaurants. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. After I got out of the Marines, I met a girl in South Carolina. Now, see, I just,
we haven't started that part yet.
I can't wait. But yeah, so yeah. God. Well, that was so long ago. I can't believe how long ago that was. But anyway, And when I was there, I was working at a restaurant, and I was a waiter, and they knew I was interested in acting. And in South Carolina at the time, they were filming a lot of movies. They actually thought about renaming South Carolina Hollywood East because they filmed so many movies there. One of the movies, I don't know if you knew this or not, this is the first time you're hearing it, I'm sure, that they filmed there is called The Jungle Book. The live action version with Jason Scott Lee. You guys, it was way before your time, I know. Jason Scott Lee is Bruce Lee's great nephew, I think. He was Brandon's cousin or son, I can't remember. But Jason Scott Lee has lineage to Bruce Lee, as I'm sure you all know who that is. But anyway, so that's the movie, and one of the waitresses came up to me and said they're having a casting call for The Jungle, and I said, The Jungle Book, really? It's a cartoon. Yeah, they're making a live action version.
I've actually heard of that movie.
Yeah, they've made a few versions of it. But have you guys heard of the movie The Mummy?
The Mummy, yes.
Mummy, yes.
The same guy that directed The Mummy, Stephen Sommers, actually directed this. So this movie was a Walt Disney film. So the first movie I was ever in was a film made by Walt Disney. You guys don't know this about me.
Wow.
So I went to this casting call. It was at this Holiday Inn in South Carolina. I went to the casting call, and they were looking for people to be British soldiers. So that was big back then. During the era that The Jungle Book was filled, British soldiers and Indians. So they all kind of worked together. And so I went there. All they did was take a Polaroid of me. And by the time I got home, there was a message on my machine saying, we'd like to cast you as an extra in this film. And I was like beside myself. I was like, oh, my God, I'm going to be in a Walt Disney film. But that wasn't even the beginning of it. What blew my mind is when I got there the first day, before we even shot the film, for our fitting. And it was just, they had tents everywhere. And they had like animals on chains, like against trees, like elephants and oxen. They had real live like animals, horses.
Wow.
And I went there, and they had me like going into a trailer, and I was talking to these designers, and they were like checking my measurements and checking my head size, and I had this actual vintage British soldier outfit that I wore during the shoot. So I wasn't only in a Walt Disney film, I was like really like dressed up for the part. It was so amazing. And I was sitting there on this log, and this is when filming started, and it was at nighttime. It was about midnight, and I'm sitting on this log, and all the other actors are around me, and there's a fire burning, and the big actor was over here doing his scene, and we're all watching him. And I just looked around, and I said, wow, I'm going to do this for a long time. It was like one of those things where I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. So I kind of switched into like the acting thing, and I did that for a while. I went to New York City. I started doing theater and things like that. I did a lot of theater in Pennsylvania where I lived, at small theaters, and I did Death of a Salesman, and I played the main role in that. And it was just something that I really easily got into because it was just easy for me to memorize lines. I don't know what it was. If I knew, if I really liked the character, it was easy to memorize. And Biff and Death of a Salesman is something they teach in high school in America. I don't know if they still do, but I learned it in 9th grade. You had to learn one of the monologues from it. So I thought that was pretty cool, that was the show that was available. So I tried out for it, and I auditioned, and I got the part, and it's a huge part. And so that's really when I got involved in theater. So I had the film side and the theater side, and I was like, okay, I'm about to take the next step. And I was like, and again, challenges all my life, and wanting to challenge myself. Why not? Moved to New York City, didn't know anything about it, never been there before. You're crazy. You're from a small town. You're trying to move to New York and become an actor. You're out of your mind. My family was like, you're crazy. You need to get your life back together. Why'd you join the Marines? I went from an artist to a Marine to getting into acting. It's just a guy who didn't know what he wanted to do with his life, but he just wanted to experience whatever he could. There's a lot of people that do that. So that's what I did for a while. Got into the acting thing, and am I on the right track here? Yeah.
Of that, let's switch gear again.
Okay.
For some real tough questions of this section. I've been wanting to ask this question for a while.
Sure.
It could be a little personal, so
right.
You always have your Fifth Amendment rights.
Yeah, I know all about that.
But yeah, so I believe from our experience working together in DC that you were once upon a time on the streets, right, or close to be on the streets, and then you made a movie about it. You directed a movie. Could you tell us more about that? I think that's a lot of people when they get down once, they can never get back up together. And it's to be able to lift yourself, when you're at that low point, up to, now being, part of the whistleblowers movement and actually being an American icon of the whistleblowers movement. It's quite a story. It's very inspiring for many of us to hear. And I know there's a lot of people in China at this moment that are struggling with, similar situations. They feel like they can't lift themselves up. But I want them to know that hope is always there, and God is always there to help them. So could you tell us a little bit about the story?
I didn't know you were going to go there. That's yeah. Well, I made a movie out of it, so I guess you got to talk about it. It's out there. It's something that's very close to me, very personal. Yeah, it's still tough. It's still tough to talk about, but I love what you said about it, and that's really what it's about. It's about it's about a struggle that I went through, and being able to share that with people. And then hopefully they'll learn from my mistakes and not make the same mistakes. Or even if they did, know that if you make those mistakes, that you can come out of it. Mm-hmm. Because I was in a situation in my life, and it's actually a really good segue, Prince, because what I was going to talk about next was what happened after the acting thing. And while I was in New York, that's when my addiction kicked in. I was, when you're around a lot of people, especially in the entertainment industry, it's true. I mean, a lot of people do a lot of partying, and I did. I took it a little too far sometimes, and I kind of ended up in a place where I didn't want to be, and it was hard to. It's hard to talk about it still, even though I even made a movie about it. It's still hard to talk about it and to open up about it. But yeah, I struggle with alcoholism, and it was an addiction that runs in my family, and it was very, very hard for me to cope with. I was dealing with internal struggles of my own, where I was like, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life or where I wanted to go. Although I was doing what I wanted to do, I wasn't doing what I needed to do. Right. Sometimes we put things of value in things, we put ourselves, our own greed and wants in front of what God really wants from us. And I was raised as a Christian, and what I was doing was the opposite of how I was raised. So the great part about it was, though, even though I did, as Prince said, it's true, I ended up homeless on the street. The greatest part about it, though, is I still had my faith, and that's what got me through all of that. And that's why today I still don't drink. It's been about, I don't know, I can't tell you how long. It's 1996 maybe, since I've had a drink, to 25 years maybe. I went to the meetings and did all that, but it's a whole nother story. But you want to talk about the film, but yeah, it was addiction. It runs in my family, and the coolest thing about it is I was not only able to. I feel like I was able to stop the line of addiction that was happening and stop it at me. And hopefully from that point on, my family would learn, we shouldn't be doing this. You know what I mean? Not everybody in my family was like that. It was only certain people. It was the lineage on my father's side. And that's what the movie covers. It talks about that. But I was able to find God again, and that's who I always use as my guide today, obviously, and that's what that's who led me to this. I really believe that. So I have a very strong faith, and that's what it was about. Really, it was about my struggles and my addictions and what I did to overcome it. And the film was something that I put on the back burner for a long time so I could get my life back together. It was something I started writing while I was in New York, when I was still doing the acting thing. I started writing the story, and that became part of my own recovery process. To talk about what you're going through and share your true emotions with yourself is to anybody out there that's addicted to anything. If you find out who you really are, that starts to become the beginning of your healing process. Right. That's what you have to do. It's not about just stopping and starting a new life. You need to find out who that person is inside of you, and most of the time it's a great person. He just went the wrong way, and that's what happens. So anyway, fast forwarding to a bunch of years, getting sober, and I picked up the story, put it down, picked it up. Finally, in 2019, I was able to get people to believe in me. I started getting investors. I told them my story. Looks like I'm telling you right now. And they were like, wow, it's amazing what you've been through and how you stopped it and how you're sober now. And imagine a drunk guy trying to get money from somebody. Nobody would give them money, unless you're poor in a corner. It's tougher. It's a lot tougher. But someone who's sober and does that and does it because of their faith. So it became a faith-based film. That's the direction it took. The film is based completely on how I had lost everything but found my faith again in Christ. And I wanted to share that story. And I think God blessed me along the way, all along the way, Gave me this fantastic, beautiful wife. I was able to tell this amazing story. And it not only became something that I finished doing, I wrote the script. I became the director of it. I directed it. I produced it. I wrote it. And not only that, it got finished, which hardly ever happens with a first-time filmmaker, but we actually got distribution. It went into a bunch of film festivals and won a whole bunch of awards. But the first one I was in Florida. It's called the International Christian Film and Music Festival, and it's the biggest Christian film festival in the U.S. It's like the Hollywood of film festivals. I was selected for that. I didn't win, but somebody saw my film when I was there, and it was a distributor. It was a film distributor, and he's like, we want to put your film into movies, into the theaters. I was like, what? Like, it's my first film. It's going to be in, I didn't expect that. I was just thinking I'd be in, the goal was to get it out to people that are, and to show people, that if you're addicted, you can go through this and still come out of it on the other side. And I never expected in a million years that it'd be in theaters. So it made it to the movie theaters. It was released in a bunch of theaters in Pennsylvania, which is my home state. It didn't do so well. It's a faith-based film. They never do in theaters. But I was lucky enough to find another distributor after that one who distributed faith-based movies. They made the film into a DVD, and it actually got on Amazon. It got on a whole bunch of cable channels, Xfinity, Comcast, DirecTV, Blue Ridge Cable, a whole bunch of those, and Amazon. That was the big one. So it's on Amazon Prime, and you can watch it in the U.S. or anywhere in the world. There's 64 countries. Thank you. 64 countries all over the world that have the film. And then I get the big news is that they wanted to make a DVD out of it, and Walmart liked the movie. They have a person that screens all the films, and they distribute it in Walmart. So it's been in the Walmarts now all over the United States for the past. I think it's been released now for about 3 weeks. It's been a new release in Walmart for 3 weeks. It's been doing okay. Doesn't do as great as the other faith-based movies that have big name actors in it. I don't have anybody really famous in it because I didn't really know anybody famous and didn't have that kind of money. But it got a lot of recognition. But that's not really the point of it either. If you never make the focus on money and you make it on something bigger than that, which is God, make him the reason you're doing something, and everything else will fall into place. I would have never thought in a million years that I'd be living on the street and talking to you today here in this studio in the middle of New York City about this film, that I'd be doing that. That's only God working there. So that's the story behind the film.
And just for our audience, what is the name of the film?
It's called Right Before Your Eyes.
Right Before Your Eyes. You heard it. Go to Amazon, go to Walmart, go support the guy.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I think it's very important you mentioned, this is a faith-based movie, right?
Yeah.
And it's faith. It's your faith, your belief in God, in Jesus Christ, in the righteousness of his power that brought you all of the bottom that you were in to the place where you are today. And I think, and a lot of people reckon with us is that, a very central message of the whistleblowers movement and of the New Federal State of China is that we want to bring faith, freedom of religion, freedom of faith back to China, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Buddhism. I think all religion exists for a purpose, that besides humanity, there's a higher power, right? There is a higher calling. There's something bigger than just capitalism, than just money. And there's something bigger than humanity and earth altogether. And that we call it God, right? And if you truly believe in it, and if you put your whole heart into it, God will respond to you, and he will answer your questions, and he will show you in his own ways, So I think, a lot of people in China right now, especially, we just heard, there's, more than 24 marathon runners that died in blizzarding cold because the marathon wasn't properly prepared.
Right.
And many more people in Wuhan were thrown into into the burning to ashes when they were alive.
Yeah.
And those are the atrocities being committed in China. And I'm sure that many Chinese people are feeling hopeless right now. They feel like there is no God. They feel like God is not there to help them. And to those people who are feeling that desperate, who are, truly in the lowest of their life, who are just desperate for help, what can you tell them about God? What can you tell them about faith?
Well, David, before we go in deep into Prince's question, I think a lot of our audience would be very curious. How much do you know about China? Because you are an American, right? You probably watch all of our videos and read the news of G News, GTV platform. How much do you know about China? Have you ever visited? Or how much do you know about CCP? Why do you have all of the face in the whistleblowers movement? Because you've kind of leading a very inspiring life. We've heard ups and downs, and it's very amazing to see how you overcome with the challenges and struggles. But like in terms of like your participation and your belief in this movement, let's start with why do you believe in it, and how much do you know about the CCP?
Well, I can tell you this, and that's a great question, and yours is really, that's getting deep, man. I'm glad I have a moment to think about that, because that's one you'll have so many people, when you ask me that question, I see China getting very quiet, waiting for my answer. Am I going to give them the answer that they want to hear? And it's something that you talk about from the heart. But and Isla, that's a great question. And the reason it is because before I got involved with the whistleblower movement, before I met my Chinese wife, I've always had an interest in Asia, in the East, and I never actually studied it that much. I didn't know too much about the culture, but it was very interesting to me. It was something that I wanted to. I don't know if I should say this or not. It was something that I'm interested in. It was for other reasons other than, well, it was the culture, but obviously you could probably figure it out why I married a Chinese woman. Okay, so I'll just leave it there. All right, there was a definite attraction. Okay, yeah. So, it's my it's my weakness, I guess you could say. But anyway, this question's kind of layered, because I can tell you right now, I was the way that I talk to the people that I see now, that I talk to that don't know about China, were like me. They didn't know about China, and I'm the one that's trying to help them. By having this program, by being able to host the Fringe in English and try to share that with people. So I'm trying to answer this in a way where you can understand where I came from and where I am now. So basically, again, my wife got me more interested in what was happening with China and the CCP a lot more than I knew about, because we weren't really, if you just watch the news, I was that guy who just watched the news like anyone else. And to be honest with you, up until the point where my wife started telling me about Miles Guo and the new federal state of China and the whistleblower movement, I didn't know a lot about China and about the CCP. It was just, they're a communist country. I know we can travel there, so it can't be that bad, right? I didn't know the deepness of it, of how deep this really went, of how deep that rabbit hole goes, of how bad it really is. And being able to join the whistleblower movement opened up this completely new world to me. And that's what intrigued me the most, was I was unaware of really what was going on. And it was GTV, it was Prince, it was Miles Guo, it was all those people telling me this is what's really happening there. And the proof is when you hear about it a year later on CNN, and they're acting like they're the ones that disguise. Sorry, I keep going back to that. But anyway, going back to your question, I didn't know a lot about the CCP, to be honest with you. I did not know a lot about the CCP, what they did, or how they treated their citizens until I joined the whistleblower movement. And that's why it's so important to me to be a part of this and to share that with other Americans and non-Americans, but as long as they speak English and understand English, because that's who we're trying to reach out to, and to show the Chinese people in China that, because we have the G translator that actually translate from America to Chinese, so they know that there's an American that's on their side and knows what's going on. It's important for them too. So that's what really, I didn't know anything about China, about the CCP,
Appreciate
hardly
your
anything, because if you put yourself in my shoes,
Right.
now this is where it gets kind of complicated. You put yourself in my shoes and the shoes today of how Americans are and the way that they're given the news on the mainstream media, you would understand why I didn't know
Of
anything
course.
about
Absolutely.
the CCP or what's going on in China. Just like that CNN, one of the biggest news networks in the world, doesn't know about what's going on in China or the CCP because they don't cover it. They don't care about that.
And I think to a part, you said about CNN, and I think it's not that they didn't know. It's willful ignorance.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
what it is.
Yeah.
It's willful ignorance because, it's the fact that China is a communist regime, right? That fact is internationally recognized for more than 70 years, right? No one disputes that's a fact, right? And what happens with communist regime, we've seen it repeated in Soviet Union, in Cuba, in Eastern Europe, in Argentina, all over the world. We've seen the same tragedy with communism, with authoritarianism. It's on repeat, right? But it's the willful ignorance of the Western capitalists that caused this tragedy. It's not like CNN didn't know about human rights abuses in China. People write to CNN, to all these news organizations all the time. They chose to ignore it because they saw the money, right? They want to collaborate with the Chinese government and they want to make the quick buck. But in doing so, they are sacrificing their very own freedom. Now everybody goes on the street. You gotta wear a chin diaper, right? I call it a chin diaper because it is a shame. It is. I will have to say this: shame on Wall Street, shame on everybody who supported the CCP that caused this. Nobody should be wearing a mask going around. This is America, but we're doing that because of the decades of debt that we own to the Chinese people, and frankly, to anybody that's harmed by the CCP virus. So, going back to the question, after you joined the whistleblower movement, and after you discovered this array of human rights atrocities that's going on in China, what have you learned? What do you know about the human rights abuses in China? Because, to a lot of people in America, they think China is, it's like America. They think, they speak different language, they have different culture. But yeah, people in China can vote, people in China can go on the internet, but that's not what it is. And once you put the fact in front of the people, they will see it for what it is, and they will unite with us, in this mission to take down the CCP. So just for our American audience here and for our English-speaking audience, could you tell them what you learned about, China and the CCP?
One of the most shocking things, and this is giving props to you again, one of the most shocking things I ever learned when I got into the whistleblower movement, one of the first things this man right here ever told me is when we were at that restaurant in Washington, D.C., and I remember we were all together gathering. May was there, and it was the first time I met you. And he came up to me, and we were talking. I told him how much I appreciated this opportunity and, our little pleasantries or whatever to get our food. He started talking to me. We were sitting across the table from each other, and I was like, just give me whatever you have. Give me some knowledge. And it was almost like a crash course to get me ready for the next day because we were broadcasting the next day. And he told me about Xinjiang and the Uyghurs. That's the first time I ever heard about that. And I was like, what? That's really going on? And I didn't know about it.
To specify for our audience, so what exactly did you learn about what's going on in Xinjiang?
What I learned about Xinjiang is what I looked into after you told me about it and what I've been hearing about it ever since and what we cover, and we've talked about it on many episodes of The Fringe. What's happening in Xinjiang is the Uyghurs are basically being held in concentration camps. The Uyghurs are a Muslim minority group in the western region of China and in the mountainous region. And what's happening to them is racism, basically. The CCP doesn't like Muslims. That's the way I see it. They're a religious group that they think are terrorists. And the irony of this whole thing is I found out the reason why the Muslims are the way that they are is because they fight back against the CCP.
Right.
So the
That's-
reason they're considered terrorists, and it's a racist ideology to even say that every Muslim is a terrorist. Unfortunately, when 9/11 occurred, and we're right down, it's right here. You look out the window. People were afraid of Muslims, and unfortunately, that's the way things happen sometimes. Muslims, these radical Muslims, took over airplanes and crashed them into the World Trade Center. We know all about it. I cried when I talked about it yesterday.
I just want to put into perspective the magnitude of this atrocity, of this ongoing genocide that's happening in Xinjiang as we speak right now. Of about approximately 7 million men and women and child in Xinjiang of Muslim population, at least on the lower end of the estimate, 1 million of them are currently in concentration camps.
Right.
That is 1 in 7 people, right? This is the war. This genocide, which I have to say it, I hate to say it, because what happened to the Jews during the World War II is absolutely unacceptable, and it should never be repeated. But this is worse than that. This is a genocide on a scale the world has never seen before, and the world's been shut up about it, right? Mao Squad was the very first people to talk about this back in 2017. And back then when he started talking about this has been going on for at least 5 years as far as we know.
Here we are.
Right? And only in January of this year did the United States finally recognize that what's going on in Xinjiang is a genocide.
That's right.
And even today, people refuse to talk about it. Western media refuse to talk about it. And it angers me every time to think all these human rights, to think that UN Human Rights Council and all these human rights advocates standing up there talking about how we should be, stop the racism, talking about Black Lives Matter. And I say, look, if you're looking for racists to take down, go after the CCP. They're the biggest racist there exists, right? So going back to the question, when I was previously asking to, you've had some moments to think about it, to those people that are suffering in Xinjiang, that are suffering in Hong Kong, that fear invasion from CCP, those folks in Taiwan, what do you have to say to them? What do you have to say to them to get them to believe in God? There's a lot of, I hate to say, there's a lot of atheists in China. I myself, obviously, is a devoted Christian, and I think it's so important to help people understand the importance of faith in life,
right?
Because without it, you're baseless.
Yeah. What I can say is, what I want to say is, obviously, your faith in God is what's going to pull you through this. But what I really want to say is that I want them to know, I want the Chinese people in China to know, I want any Uyghur in Xinjiang who could possibly be watching this. I'm not even sure, I guess through VPNs or whatever they have in China, they're able to get through these firewalls, these internet firewalls that China has, that the CCP has set up. I want you to know this, that we're here fighting for you. And we're led by God. That's our faith is what draws us to you. And I want you to know that I, Prince, Isla, whoever you see on GTV, Luda, Miles Guo, of course, the end game for us is to take down the CCP. And I'm telling you right now, we are here to do that. I understand the risk that I'm taking to do this. I've already seen on Twitter where my family's been outed by the CCP. They're printing articles up about me. They're finding pictures of me online from the film. They're going into my personal history online. I mean, well, it's not personal once you get online. But I'm here to tell you, I've risked my life for 2 things in my entire life. I've risked my life for something. The first one was when I signed my name on that piece of paper saying that I would die for my country to be a United States Marine. And the second time I did it was when I joined, a few years ago, when I joined the whistleblower movement. And I knew when I was getting into this that the CCP was possibly going to come after me, but I wasn't afraid, and I'm not afraid. And that's what I want to tell them. I want to tell them that no matter what, from this point, from the point that I started this, and from today on, and from that day to this day, I've done nothing and will do nothing but fight for you until the CCP is taken down, because that's what we're here for. We're here to take down the CCP. And that's what I can promise them. And that's why we have the Fringe, so we can take this to a vaster, more broad audience to let them know that, to let them know what's going on in Xinjiang. I didn't know. Prince told me, and I was shocked. And then, he showed me the book, the bio warfare book. And
Unrestricted warfare.
Yeah, unrestricted warfare. And there's just so many things that the American people are unaware of again. And that's what goes back to, I just want to do the site because it keeps coming up on my head and I want to talk about it. Why this is so important to me to talk about this in English to the American people is because one of the protests I went on was against, you all know Teng Biao. I say his name, my wife laughs because I don't think I say it right.
The CCP spy.
Yeah, the CCP spy that lives in New Jersey. We went to Princeton, and we set up shop there. We were protesting there, and American people were coming by. Some people were yelling at us. They didn't know what we were about and thought we were trying to start trouble with China, and we're trying to save China here.
Right.
A guy comes up to me, and he's very nice. He's asking me what we're doing here, and I start explaining to him about Xinjiang and the Uyghurs, and we have the spy here, and we're against the CCP. We're here to take down the CCP. And no kidding, says to me, "What's the CCP?" And that's when I realized that was another one of those moments in your life when you realize, okay, I'm doing the right thing, and I think I know why I'm here now. And I told him it's the Chinese Communist Party. You don't know? Oh, it's their government. Yeah, I know they're communists. I just didn't know what the CCP was. And I kind of didn't either, before that. And I did my work. And that's what you have to do. I think as a person with faith in God and with humanity, when you see what the CCP is doing within their own country and to the rest of the world, by spreading a virus that killed millions of people, you can't just sit down and sit back and say, well, that's another country, so I don't really want to deal with what's going on there. Yeah, maybe you don't want to deal with it, and I don't know why you wouldn't when it's happening to someone else. A lot of people think that way. Well, it's not me. I'm comfortable in my little seat where I'm sitting. I'm not going to do anything about it. It's not me. I'm not a Uyghur. I'm not in Xinjiang. I don't live in China, and that's the reason. No, that's not why you do it. You do it to help those people. And that's why I do it. And I think that's the most important part for me about the whistleblower movement is I'm able to do that. I now have the knowledge to share what I can when I can. And I love having Isla and Ada on the show because they bring up things that I didn't. I learn something every day. And that's what you have to do. You have to keep passing that information on. You got to get it from Miles, get it from Lou Doug, get it from whoever you can on GTV. Listen to it, ingest it, pass it on to the next person. Get that thing rolling, and that's what the whistleblower movement does. And one day, if we do it, if we keep doing what we're doing, and we promise you again, China and especially Xinjiang, we're going to keep doing what we're doing, and someday you'll be seeing this flag. You'll be seeing this flag right here flying above every capital, above every building in China, instead of the sickle and hammer and the stars they have now, the red and yellow.
And I just want to add, it's not something. It is one day.
Yeah.
It's a definitive that we will take down the CCP. Not tomorrow, obviously.
Thanks for correcting me there.
Within this year, but I promise you, right, to the best of my ability, that within 5 years from today, we'll be standing in Beijing with our new Federal State of China flag flying high and above the Tiananmen Square to pay tribute to all of those who have suffered under this regime. I think it's, just like how a spark of light can light up an entire world filled by darkness, right? A hope, just a little bit of hope can fill your entire world and power you through the worst time of your life. And I want to say this to all of the people that are in Xinjiang, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, and all over mainland China. I want to say this to you. We are all here, everybody, me, Isla, David, we're all here fighting for you. And it's not just us. People from all over the world are gathering together to stay united behind our mission to help you. We're here because we want to fight for you, and we'll never stop fighting for you. And I promise you, we will win. We will win this fight because God is by our side, because we're fighting for the right thing, and we're doing the right thing. So anytime you feel low, anytime you feel down, just know that the entire world is watching. The entire world is getting together ready to help you.
Right. I think, in my opinion, the new federal state of China is, like what Prince said, a spark of hope for a lot of mainland Chinese people, especially for those who are using the VPN, trying to watch our program right now and trying to understand what David had talked through the simultaneous translation. We are giving people a spark of hopes to see, hey, we have Chinese representatives out there to build connections with the Western community, with the international community, to say that, hey, we're different from the Chinese Communist Party. We're trying to bring justice, truth, and freedom back to mainland China. We're trying to establish a new image of Chinese people in the international world. And that's very much important, and that's what we do. And I think another thing that I want to say, even though I'm a host today, but is that we're not only fighting for the people who live in mainland China, we're actually fighting for the thing that we believe in for ourselves. So David, I have some tough questions prepared for you. I know that you believed in the whistleblowers movement, and you kind of was, affected by Judy, your wife, and by Prince when the younger generation popped out in this movement. But how do you evaluate Miles Guo in this movement? And in your eyes, what kind of role does he play in the movement, and how much do you understand about him as a leader of this movement or as an icon, in the whole process?
Well, like anybody who takes on something this important and this vast and this deep and this complex, you have to really pay attention. And that's really what got me into this was, when I saw my wife just mesmerized by this guy, it's what made me want, and that's what you want to see. You want to see, like, what is he doing? How is he physically affecting you? What is he doing mentally to you? Is he giving you information? And we always, like I said in the beginning, is you always kind of, especially as an American, you're seeing something happening from the outside. And when you Google search them, you don't see all these great stories all the time. But I learned quickly that there's a lot of garbage out there because there are people that want to take him down. And that's the thing you learn right from the beginning. You don't just start passing judgment on someone just because a news article says something. We know for a fact now you never blame it in mainstream media. So I was reading these negative articles and these positive articles, and I'm thinking, but why is he doing this? And that was most important to me. Why is he doing this? So in the beginning, it was really difficult to understand because what my wife would tell me gets some stuff gets lost in translation. You don't understand fully. You don't get the impact of it, what it really means, and like what it means to Prince and what it means to you and what it means to me is completely different. But in the end, we all know it only means one thing, and it's to take down the CCP, and we know why. So the most important thing I learned about it and from Miles Guo was that he is a humanitarian. That's what this is all about. It is all about how much this man loves the place where he came from. He didn't want to leave China. He didn't want. That's his heart, his soul. That's where he was born. That's his culture. That's who he is. He did not want to leave there, but he did because he loved those people so much that he was willing to do anything. He put his life on the line. He is willing to die for his country that they're trying to get to hate him. That their government is trying to get to hate him every day. And that's got to be one of the most difficult things for any person to go through and to do, to know that, I'm not going to compare him to Christ. I never would do that. But it's almost similar how much somebody loves something so much that they would be willing to die for it. God loves us so much that he sent his only son to this earth, knowing that he was going to die so we'd be saved from sin. Miles Guo came here to America because he wanted to save the people of China from death, from the CCP, because that's their future. That's all you have with the CCP. And that's the most, what stands out to me about him to be the most endearing and most respectful thing that I can think of that I can equate with what Miles is. And you don't meet many people like that in your lifetime. You're lucky if you meet a handful, maybe 3, 4 people are like that. And I don't remember in my lifetime. Okay, maybe we can talk about other big time who made like Martin Luther King Jr. People that have made a difference culturally and ideologically and humanitarily. And Martin Luther King's obviously one of them. There's just a handful of those people that come along. They're once in a generation kind of people, and that's what he is. You don't see this kind of man come along every day. And he's not a guy where you're reading about people are joining this cult and they're trying to, they're all going to end up drinking the juice like they did with Jim Jones and dying in some commune in North Carolina. That's not what it's about. This thing's getting bigger and bigger every day, and it's because we're sharing the tragedies that are going on over there, and we're making people aware, and it's exposing the CCP, and the next step is to hold them accountable. But going back to the original, the origin of the question,
right,
is he's a humanitarian, and that's the bottom line. You don't see many people like that in your lifetime, and when you do, someone like me that can recognize that and knew it right away. Well, I didn't know it right away, but I saw it very, very shortly after I started hearing about him. And that's the short answer for you.
Thank you, David. I think a lot of people, especially for us who has been in this movement for a long time, we all understand Miles. He didn't need to risk his life, risk his families to do this for people out there, but he chose to do that. He chose to fight for the nation. And that's why we, believe in this movement. That's why more and more brothers and sisters came to join and to devote themselves into this movement to do what they can do to take down the CCP.
And, I want to interject one thing, and I can tell you this from experience, me talking to my American friends. First of all, I tell my family, they know what I'm doing. They're scared for me, obviously. They know the CCP's after me. But they're after all of us. We know that. I mean, in one way or another, we're marked. We are. They're afraid of that. But one thing I wanted to say was when I try to talk to my friends about this, they listen to me, but they're kind of scared to get involved. They're kind of apprehensive because of what is behind it.
Right.
People know. They know, that there's this. They know. They don't know what some of them don't know what CCP means, but they know that
the risk.
They know they're bad and that there's a risk there. Yeah. So when I ask my friends, they want to kind of. Yeah, man, we support you, but we're going to support you from over here. We don't really want to put our faces out there. And I even noticed that on, and I understand that people on GTV do it too. They cover their eyes and their faces, and they want to protect their families, and I understand that. But I'm one of the guys, like I told, the people of China when he asked me how I can inspire hope in them and what I can do. I'm not afraid. I'm not, and I've said it before. I've said it I've been interviewed at the protests outside. I'm not afraid of the CCP. If I was, I wouldn't be here, and because I'm not, that shows that there's strength in that. There's something to be said for me willing to give my life for these people in China that I've never met, because I know what Miles Guo started and what we're all doing here is for something that is so much bigger than anything we can ever put a number on, that we could quantify monetarily. This is all about, at its basis, the humanitarianism of it, and that's what it's really all about. And if we focus on that, people are going to start to see that, and I think they are. They're waking up slowly, but they are, and that's the important thing. This thing that we're part of it's exciting. It's huge. It's big. What we're part of, you guys, we might not totally see it right now because we're in it.
We're in it.
You're gonna read about us in the history books. You will. Sorry, now the emotions are coming up because. What's happening right now, what we're involved in is so big, and we don't see it. I think sometimes we do, but this is so big right now, and people are starting to be affected by it, and it really means something, and it's really important to me to keep that going, and I'm glad I could dig in that deep and feel that emotion that much about this, because we are writing history right now. We are doing what Martin Luther King did with segregation in America. We are doing something for the people of China, and we're doing something for the rest of the world, because we are ourselves under the tyranny of the CCP because of this virus that they created in a lab and killed millions all over the world. So we are part of something that is so big right now. We are the spark. Miles gave us a message. We believed it. And now we're going with it, and we're sharing it with everyone else, and that's the most important thing, and that's what drives me every day. If you truly believe in something, it's so easy to do, isn't it? I mean, and it's something that it just comes naturally, and you start to learn more about it, and it makes you mad. You know, Prince gets upset when he hears about, when he told me about Xinjiang and the Uyghurs, you could see the absolute anger in his eyes, and he just wanted to. You could tell he wanted to put on a suit of armor and just go over there and take out the whole Chinese Communist Party by himself. That's how we all feel. But we can't go that route. We have to go another route. And I think the way we're doing it is the right way. It's the special way. It's the important way. And again, at the top of all of it, guiding us, besides God and Miles, Miles Guo, we're all driven by our faith in what we believe in. And that's really something, again, that you can't quantify, but you feel it inside. That I can get my American friends and family to believe in it the way I do. And I think the only way you can really do that is to keep this thing going. Never stop. Never stop. No matter how much they tell you you're crazy for doing it, no matter how much you're threatened by the CCP. And that's the scariest part about it for the Chinese people. Even for them, it's, they're scared over there. They know what they, and that's the other thing. Some of them don't know about it.
Right.
They're cut off from the news. They're lied to about everything. So it's our job. It is our responsibility to get this out there. And that's our responsibility. That's my responsibility. It's yours. It's Prince's, and you know that. And we do that every single day, every chance we get. Prince, you're sleeping how many hours a night now? I mean, we talked about it before the show. Miles sleeps, 2 to 4 hours if he's lucky, because that's how much someday we'll be there, I mean, you're getting there now, even in your young age. They that's really what it's all about. And when you're driven by something, you're that passionate about something that's that important, you don't want to stop until they are finished, until they take down the CCP, and we're all celebrating.
I reckon with a lot, of what you just said about, this being, we're at an inflection point in history where we're at a crisp or something big, something huge, a breakthrough that will change humanity forever. And sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you get lost, right? Yeah. You think about the threat the CCP can make, you think about how much money they have, how much power, how many influence you have. But when you think about it, back in the days, Nazi Germany was even more powerful than this.
Yeah.
And even then, they were taken down. Just like every single evil empire
that
ever existed, at the end, they were always defeated, without an exception, right? That's an absolute rule that, the people that doing the right thing will always win at the end. And here's what I say, when you take a step back, just to look at the history. So forget about the whistleblower movement. Forget about us, right? Let's think about America. What is America? Americans are dreamers. Americans dare to dream, right? They came all the way across the Pacific Ocean from England, from Europe, arrive in this native land that nobody knows anything about, and they start this great civilization, the beacon of freedom that is America we are sitting today. So, I want to wake that dream in all of the Americans' hearts that your blood, it is in your blood. Your thirst for freedom, your thirst for freedom, not just for yourself, but for people all over the world. It's in your blood. You just have to reach for it and look through it. I always say this to the people. 100 years ago, black people weren't allowed to vote. They were slaves. Right? And 100 years ago, everybody in the world thought, okay, this is how it's going to stay for the rest of our
300
lifetime.
Years ago.
Right? Wait and behold. Black people were freed, and that pushed the entire human civilization to the next stage, because we had, we were able to, welcome our black brothers and sisters into this great community, into this humanity, that we were able to create TVs and all these great things. And then people thought, okay, women were supposed to be housewives. They were supposed to stay home and cook all day long, right? But that wasn't true. We realized, okay, women are just as brilliant, in many aspects more brilliant than men are. So we said, okay, women can vote. We gave them universal suffrage. We let women be equal to us. And look at what happened. That pushed us to this great civilization that we are in. And I say this to, not just Americans, but people all over the world, that the freedom, the liberation of the Chinese people, of the 1.4 billion people in China, is the beginning of the next great age that we're about to
That's
step
right.
in.
Absolutely.
The
That's right.
best still lies ahead.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And if you look at the history, if you take a step back, right, you think about all the impossibility that people raise about black people, about women, they were wrong. Black people were freed, women were freed, and so will the Chinese people. And that is what will get us through next civilization. Because God forbid us, if we fail to take down the CCP, they're going to swallow us whole and send us down the rabbit hole that Satan governs. And not me, not certainly you, and none of us will ever want to go there.
But guess what? We're not going to fail.
Exactly. And guess what? We're not going to fail because we're doing the right thing, and God is by our side.
That's right.
So, yeah. Beautifully said first.
Oh,
Friends.
yeah.
Of course.
You
You guys always done great speeches in front of all of the cameras. So I want to talk something about like your personal life. We know we've covered a lot about your life stories. I know Prince very well. His girlfriend supported him so well in the whistleblowers movement.
Wait, you have a girlfriend?
So I know Judy's also like working together with you in the whistleblowers movement. How do you balance your life right now? I know you've devoted a lot of time doing the programs, going on the streets, doing the protests. How do you balance your current life and your relationship with all of your devotion into this?
Well, I want to say one thing first. It was one of the most important things. I don't speak Chinese. It's a tough language. It really is. And I'm in my, whatever age you guys figured out that I am by this point. I kind of make excuses like, I don't know, learn this tough language. And Chinese isn't an easy language to learn. But anyway, the point I wanted to make was the first thing I did learn that you should learn if you are interested in a Chinese woman and you fall in love with her, you better learn how to say, well, I need. Right? Well, I need. Did I say
You
it
have
correctly?
to learn this,
you have
right?
to learn
You
well,
have
I
to
need,
learn
right?
this.
And I just learned Shinkola recently. Shinkola. Did I say it right? Shinkola. Work hard. So love your wife and work hard. But how do we balance it out? Well, it's really, there's no balance to it. This is our life.
Right.
We go home when we're not protesting and we're thinking about what are we going to do next. I'm preparing my show. What I do for the Fringe is we get the information from our research team. They send me the information, all the stories that the breaking news for that day or for that week or those couple days. And the show's Tuesday and Friday, so I get the breaking news on Monday and Thursday. I'm also watching the news during the week, and I notice a lot more things now that my world's been opened up to the world of the CCP and the world of the whistleblower movement in New Federal State of China. I watch the news all the time now, and that was one thing I was talking about before. I wanted to stay away from it. I just got sick of, and I got off of Facebook and Instagram and all that. I just got tired of all the infighting with people, and politics is tough. It's tough to watch the news every day. It really is. It's us versus them always, and at some point we all need to come together. But back to your question though, we balance it by having that common interest. She got me interested in that, and now it's part of my life. It is my life. It's not part of it. It is my life. There's no other part. It's like we are driven by the whistleblower movement. This is what we do. Like I said, it's not something that you go home and you put the rest and it's done. Okay, we'll do this tomorrow. No, you're constantly thinking about it. She's up late at night watching things on GTV. I'm watching the news out here. I'm trying to figure out what's going on in our world. And when Lou Duh comes on, I'm always watching G-Translator. Steve Bannon, War Room, obviously. Miles, anytime Miles comes on, he's getting millions of views, and you got to watch that and listen to what he has to say. And you're not going to be able to forward the movement any if you're not learning about what's going on. So it's a constant learning. It never ends. So really, there's no balance. It is our life. We are David and Judy, whistleblowers, and we're whistleblowers till we die, and that's just the way it is. And I even when we take down the CCP, you still work on, the humanitarian part. It's going to take a long time, but we're working on it. So that's something that you think sometimes it crosses your mind. So what do we do after we take down this? Because it's going to happen. What do you do after you take down the CCP?
What's your answer on that question?
That's something I don't
on
even
that?
look. I don't even. It's something. I mean, I visit China. That's the first thing I do. I go everywhere. I visit everybody in China, and
I'm sure we'll be the tour guides for you.
yeah, I would love it. My wife, I'm not going to tell her where she's from. That's the other thing, anonymity for us. to some extent, you don't want to go too deep into your background because of anonymity against the CCP or whatever. But yeah, it was. You think about it. What do you do after? Like, we're doing this now. We are part of a historical time, and they're going to talk about us when we're long gone. We're going to be in the history books. I'm telling you right now, we are. They're going to be talking about us long after we're gone, and they're going to be carrying on what we started. And our movement is going to be something so big that it's going to inspire them. Prince talked about it. You had the movement with segregation, women's suffrage, all this, and we're the third, the third biggest one, I think, in our lifetime, or in recent memory, at least. Not in our lifetimes, but in recent memory. And what's going to be the next one will be that stepping stone to what the next obstacle that needs to be overcome. They're going to mention us. They're going to say the whistleblower movement did this for China. Martin Luther King did this for segregation. They did this for women's suffrage,
Right.
Whoever. And that's how it's going to be. That's how we're going to be thought of. So I think after it all ends, it'll be, what's the next thing? Because there's always a challenge, and we will be one of the examples they use, a positive example as to how to handle a humanitarian crisis, how to take it headstrong, take it head on, and go into the future with it, get it taken care of, and move on and try to live a peaceful, not only country within ourselves, but a peaceful earth. It's such a great undertask, or a task to take under. But afterwards, that's what I see. We'll just be the inspiration for the next one. Obviously, China will be amazing to visit, and we can't go there now. I don't think anybody can go there now, us at least.
See, I have quite a bit different view about this. I really do think that the whistleblowers movement in the New Federal State of China, obviously at our current stage, right, we stand for taking down the CCP. But I think that's just the beginning of our journey. I think our mission is far more than that. And as a believer in God, in Christ, I believe it is my calling, right? I think taking down the CCP is only the first of the many great things we will do for this human civilization. And another thing that we will do is to kind of, leave the world with this inspiring message that, the little guys, because remember, the whistleblowers movement is not made of the big guys. Oh, sure, we have Steve Bannon, we have Bill Cosby, all these guys supporting us, but they're we can do it without them. We can do it without the big name guys, but we cannot do it without the little guys. Mao Zedong himself came from the very, very, very grassroots of China, and look where he is now.
That's right.
It's proving to the common folks that if you believe it, if you put your heart and mind to it, you can do anything. And that message, I think, carries on forever. And I think will inspire for people for generations to come. So let's switch gear a little bit. We've talked a lot about ideals and inspirations and all that, but let's talk about something that everybody's interested in. All of us here in this room certainly are investors in any one of the G-series companies or enterprises, right? So I know, David, you and your wife too invested in GTV. So I would say most of the investors in GTV are Chinese investors, right? Chinese Americans, Chinese Australians, Chinese Canadians. But you as a Native American, born and raised in America, why did you decide to invest in GTV? What do you see in GTV, right? Of all these people, all my friends think I'm crazy to invest in GTV, and now they see the stats and they're getting jealous. But when you invested in it last year, how did you have the vision to invest in this?
That's a great question, and actually, I'm prepared for this one because I've been asked this question before. The reason, and this is kind of the backstory to it, and something that will solidify for you how important this is to me. I am, however old you figured out I am by now, have never invested in anything in my entire life, and I invested in GTV first of all. Yeah, never been involved with the stock market. Never invested in it. Well, okay, the movie, but that's not, there's no investment. It's just money, and, it's not a stock market. It's not something that you put your life savings into and, hope you're investing in something that's going to, it's investing is gambling. That's what it is. But with GTV, it's not, and this is the reason why. And this is the reason that, first of all, it's because I believe in, again, what the whistleblower movement represents, what we're here for. Excuse me. The reason I invested, though, was because being part actually of, and it was easier for me to see because we have a show on GTV called The Fringe, and it's because of what GTV represents, and it's telling the truth. I can guarantee you, I get this feeling. It's not even a feeling. Like I said, I can guarantee you that there are other major broadcast news companies that probably watch our program to get the truth and then use that for their own. Sometimes
Very
I'll do a
much
show.
likely.
I swear to God, I'm not bragging. I'll do a show with Isla Rada, and the next day they'll be talking about what I just talked about the day before, and I'm thinking to myself, are they watching my show? And then how am I really in that tune, or am I ahead of the game? And I feel like we're ahead of the game. Like I said, I really do. We're ahead of something. We're in front of something that's really, really big. And that's why it was so easy for me to invest, because of what it represents. Again, everything I've said about it up to this point. And because it's so easy to tell the truth, isn't it?
Right.
It's so easy to get on and tell the people what's really happening. I want to tell them the truth. I am so sick and tired of the mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC, you name it, there's one after the other, that not only doesn't tell you the truth, doesn't tell you anything, ignores it, sweeps it under the carpet, doesn't want to be a part of it. They're starting to feel the backlash from that, and someday GTV will be in the forefront. If they're not getting there already, it's going to be soon, Prince. And I think you believe that, and Isla, I think you believe it too. We are at, again, not only an important part in our whistleblower movement's history, but in GTV's history too. We're about to take that next step. I feel it. It's going to happen because people want the truth. They are starving for it. We were lied to for a year during COVID about the virus. We had a doctor, Fauci, that was supposed to be this brilliant doctor that was going to tell us all what we're supposed to do. And it was take your mask off, put it on, wear 3, wear 2, wear 1. No one believed anything. There was no faith in the system. And that's what you have with GTV. And that's why I invested in it. And that's why I'm going to stay with it.
Thank you, David.
welcome.
I think we are running out of time right now.
Oh, okay.
But we're really honored. It's a great pleasure to have you, especially on a first English version of Real People and Real Stories.
Well, I tell you what, it's been an honor to be here. And I told you before the show, I think if I speak what I want to speak about and go deep enough into that rabbit hole, you wouldn't ask me the questions that I didn't want you to ask at the end. And you didn't, did you? I got you. So anyway, yeah.
Well, thank you very much to all of our audience, and especially to those who are suffering in China through the firewall who are watching us. Trust us, we will fight for you, and we will take down the CCP for you. And David, do you want to say goodbye to our audience?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for listening tonight. And again, I want to thank Prince and Isla for having me on the show. It's been an honor, and it is part of my life. It is my life. It's not a part of it. It is my life. I've been asked to do so many things as a representative for America, and there's so much honor and responsibility in that, and I have to make sure every day that I honor that the way it's supposed to be honored, and I make sure I do that. And this is just another one of those things where I can't thank you enough, and I can't be honored enough to be able to do something like this. So thank you again, and see you again soon, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody who've watched us tonight. This is the first ever English episode of Real People, Real Stories, and we hope to bring more people just like David onto our show to tell people the truth. Thank you.
Good night, brothers and sisters.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
究竟占有共匪灭在咱的手，好酒。喝了咱的酒啊，看破中共假恶丑。喝了咱的酒啊，咱的心迈的自由。喝了咱的酒啊，心头山河一声吼。 肆虐在中华大地，管天管地管空气，中间还管着你的生殖器。老百姓们活的不如猪狗，人民的财富被他们统统卷走，传统文化全都化为乌有。歌山衙门你们难道还没受够？这帮孙子天天在搞双休，这封你的口把你思想左右，看不尽的眼泪不停的流，和谐小康社会我去你个头！喝了咱的酒啊，看破中共假恶丑，喝了咱的酒啊，咱一心买的自由，喝了咱的酒啊，几口山河一生后，喝了咱的酒啊，不灭恶党誓不休，问天一呀绿九州，真心的共跟我走，好酒啊好酒啊好酒，正义将啤酒交到你的手，天南地北从此与我便是战友，不管城市走肉，抗争不分先后，传播真相不管黑夜白昼，干了烧完酒好啤酒上心头，子的未来是我战斗的理由，舍去爱恨情仇，把心放在脑后，为自由为中共不言不休。报了革命这碗酒，敬天敬地敬战友，新中国联邦人永不为奴，跟我走。神仙阳谷现大仙，咱走走看。